Yeah, good morning, friends and comrades. We had decided to analyze the relationship between growth and development this week. The government is claiming that in the second quarter of the current financial year, Indian economy is showing signs of revival. It has registered a growth of 8.4% quarter on quarter, and it is expected that very soon the Indian economy will reach the levels which were there prior to the pandemic that hit the country. There are also claims that India is the fastest growing economy in the world. It is true that in terms of GDP, Indian economy today is the sixth largest in the world. And there are expectations that in due course it could become the third largest economy after US and China. It is also true that for the last 3 decades or a little more, Indian economy has been growing at a rate of around 6%. And with this kind of a growth, enormous wealth has been created in the country. Now our question is, when for the last 3 decades, if the Indian economy on an average has been growing at 6%, enormous wealth has been created in the country, whether this growth and this creation of wealth is translating into the welfare of every citizen of our country, then we find that it is not so. Because the benefit of the growth has been cornered by a small section of the Indian population, while the vast majority of the population has seen that the growth has bypassed them. And today across the world, a debate is taking place whether GDP is a correct barometer to judge the health of an economy or to judge how the economy is performing for all its citizens. After all, what is GDP? GDP is an aggregate of the four components. Number one, it is the amount that you, me, and every citizen spend on our consumption. Number two, it is the amount that the government consumes by way of implementing certain policies and certain infrastructure projects. And the third is what the businesses spend. Their spending to increase the capacities, their investments in the economy, in the new venture. This is the third factor. And the fourth factor is the net effect of the exports. We export certain goods for the consumption of the people outside our country, and we import certain goods for the consumption of our own people. The net effect of this is added to the other three components and the GDP is determined. Worldwide today, there is a debate whether this GDP, whether the growth that we talk about in terms of this GDP, whether it is a true reflection of the health of the economy. and therefore various other alternatives have been developed. And we do not have the time to analyze all the developments, but one important alternative is the Human Development Index, where in the Human Development Index, the health of a nation is determined by the level of education, the health facility, and the living standards. And if you make a comparison between the growth of the economy through the GDP and the improvement that we register in human development in terms of the HDI index, you find a whole lot of gap. Now the simple question before us is that if the Indian economy is ranked 6th in the world in terms of the GDP, it also must rank around the same or a little closer to that in terms of the human development. But that is not the case. In terms of the human development, India ranks 131 out of 189 countries. So there is a huge gap between the Human Development Index and your ranking in terms of the GDP. And when so much of wealth is being produced in the country, a question also arises as to what benefit it is giving to the entire population of the country. And in that we see that in terms of poverty, even today, the World Bank estimates that 28% of the Indian people are poor. And this is corroborated by Niti Aayog, which also estimates that 1 out of 4 Indians are multidimensionally poor. So if the economy is growing at that rate, if the wealth is being created, the simple question is why there should be so many poor in the country? And then the World Bank and the Human Development Index also talks about certain other issues. And this is that the number of illiterate in our country are huge, and in fact they form around 37% of the global illiterates in the world, and that looks to be a clear mismatch. In terms of the total, India's share in the global population is about 17 or 18%. But in terms of the global poor, India is having 37% of the global poor, 37% of the global illiterates. And this is a mismatch. And that is happening because the wealth that is being created, the prosperity that is being created in this country is being concentrated in a few hands. Now, how do you judge the well-being of the Indian economy? And it is the same standard which you try to judge any other economy in the world. It talks how many people want job and they are not getting the jobs. How much of unemployment is existing in the country. This is very important. If the economy grows, it automatically means that the economy must create the jobs. But that jobs are not being created. And today among the youth, nearly 20% of our youth are without jobs. Unemployment is at an all-time high. And the second aspect to judge the well-being of the economy is that what is the consumption level of the Indian people. And here despite the fact that we say that in the second quarter we have done very well, the fact remains that the consumption, the private consumption, that is the money that you and me spend in the market, is much less than what it was prior to the COVID. So the consumption level has been decreasing. And the third important factor is that how much money is being, public money or public investment is taking place for development. And that is a sad commentary when the government has decided to withdraw itself from the economic activities and say that the market knows everything, market will decide what is good for the economy, what is good for the country, then the whole process of development takes a beating. And that exactly is the reason why we say that the growth automatically does not lead to welfare. The growth automatically does not lead to the improved living conditions of the people. And for that, the government must interfere. The government must intervene as a distributor of social and economic justice. And the neoliberal philosophy that we have adopted, that says that the government must keep itself at a distance from the economic activity. The market is the best allocator of resources. The market will decide. And there is also a feeling that the people who are getting rich, in whom the wealth is getting concentrated, they are very talented. They are entrepreneurs. And therefore, there is no harm if the wealth gets concentrated in a few hands. That is where we have a serious problem. We say all these people have become rich using the community resources. And the community resources is the common property of the entire community. And that is what the directive principles of our constitution says, that the resources of the community must be utilized for the common good of the entire community. So therefore, while allowing them to use the community resources, you can't say that they have progressed, they have prospered only because of their entrepreneurial skill and the talent and the merit that they have. So we say that there should be a serious attempt to redistribute the wealth. Redistribution of the wealth is the basic and the fundamental duty of the state. The Supreme Court, in various judgments, they have held the right to a dignified life is a fundamental right, and therefore the state must ensure that everybody in this country must lead a dignified life, and that dignified life can be ensured. The poverty can be eliminated, the illiteracy can be eliminated, inequalities to a great extent can be reduced only if the government has a policy option. It is not, we can't take up a position that it is impossible to bring equality. It is a matter of choice. If the government decides to have a progressive taxation, it would be possible for us to eliminate inequality, eliminate poverty, and eliminate illiteracy in due course. And that is where India's taxation policy is heavily in favor of the rich and the elite, the corporates. And we, in our country, for the first time, the corporate tax is less than the individual direct tax. Now, India mobilized resources through taxation. The direct taxation contributes around 30% of the total tax revenue, but it is the indirect taxes of around 70% that generate resources for development. And the indirect taxes are unjust because you tax a person who is in the bottom of the pyramid at the same level as you tax 1% of the top population. Take the example of petrol prices. The tax a common man pays on a liter of petrol is the same which Adani, Ambani, Tata or Birla pay for 1 liter of petrol. The tax a common man pays for a Dolo 650 is the same as these business tycoons pay. So this is the inequality. You had to reduce the indirect taxes and increase the direct taxes. And there are various ways of taxing it. You can introduce a wealth tax, which was there sometime back in India. If it was abolished, a wealth tax can be imposed, a inherent tax can be imposed, corporate taxes can be increased, and you can generate resources to invest in the health of the people, to invest in the education of the people, to create jobs. And when you create the facilities for health, facilities for education, and give employment a employment which is well paying, automatically the poverty can be reduced, inequalities can be reduced. Today we are living in a situation where the World Inequality Report 2022 says that India is one of the most unequal society in the world. We see that there is a huge concentration of wealth, and it is also said that though India is a poor country, it has got a very affluent elite. And we are seeing a situation where 1% of the top population in India control 22% of the national income. 10% of the top population control nearly 50% of the national income, while the share of the bottom 50% of the population is only 13% of the national income. So much of inequality exists in terms of income, and if you take the wealth inequality is much more. 1% of the top Indian population control more than 52% of the national wealth. The top 10% of the population control more than 72% of the wealth, national wealth, and the bottom 50% do not have any assets at all. They do not have any wealth at all. And no democracy can function in such a manner. And this kind of inequalities, development of these inequalities, concentration of wealth is a direct attack on the Constitution of India, the directive principles of the state policy. Therefore, we must force the government to reorient their policies, reduce the inequalities in the Indian society, create more opportunities for the common people through increasing well-paying jobs, through creating better facilities for education and health. And only then you can say when growth takes place, everybody gets a fair share out of that growth. And the growth very clearly by itself will not translate into the well-being of the people. The state must act, the state must intervene, and for the state, and especially a new liberal state, to intervene, it will not do on its own. It must be forced upon the state to intervene, and that can happen only through the collective action of the toiling people and the working people. So we celebrate growth, but while celebrating growth, never forget the fact that this growth is not benefiting the vast majority of the people in this country, and we must work to ensure that the growth benefits every single Indian citizen. So this is what I wanted to tell you today, comrade. Thank you. Take care.